The 7 feasts of the Lord are an elaborate demonstration of God's timetable for mankind. The first feast is Passover, taking place the first week of the year. There was not just a day of Passover, but there was 1 hour the Passover lamb had to be slain by. Jesus lost his breath that exact hour. He was buried after the sun went down, which began another feast day, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where they celebrated the fact they had no time to put leaven or yeast into the dough. During that celebration, they have the second Passover meal. And the head of the household has a pouch called the matzah tash. Tash is the Hebrew word for unity, with 3 pieces of matzah. And during that celebration, he buries the middle piece of matzah. 3 days later is another feast day, the Feast of First Fruits, where they were to celebrate the first life that they planted in the ground that came out. It was on that day that Jesus was risen from the dead. And on that feast day, the children of the household wake up early and they search the house for that middle piece of matzah. The child that finds it brings it back to the head of the household. He then redeems it with a special present. That present is still called the gift of the Father. 50 days later, after first fruits, was the very first Pentecost. It was the day Moses came down from Sinai. In Hebrew, Shavuot. And there's a Jewish phrase that calls it the feast of the giving of the law. For on that day he was given the law, and the parallels are striking. 3,000 were taken that day because of their unbelief. Then there's a long summer period that goes by, and all of a sudden in the fall arrives the great fall feasts. The first being Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. It parallels the rapture. It was the day Joshua entered in to Jericho. And then there's 10 days of what they call awe, where you search your heart. And 10 days later is the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, where they repent and fast for their sins for the entire year. And then 5 days later is the last feast of celebration, the Feast of Tabernacles. The harvest has been brought in. It was a gigantic feast where people all over Israel came in and celebrated together. They celebrated the fact the Lord protected them for 40 years in the desert. And to us, it represents the fact we will live under the Father's protection throughout all eternity.